This isn't a beer or anything, don't worry. It's seltzer. No, I feel like that might be more appropriate this year. It's hard to believe this time last year, Rosh Hashanah, we had some special guests that came and spoke about Ukraine. You remember that? That was, and they had invited me to go to Ukraine with them in May. And a lot of people, special Cheryl Malnack, she kept saying, "You're not going to Ukraine, are you?" But that lasted for about 2 or 3 weeks because then October 7th happened, and then I ended up going to Israel 4 weeks later. So it was a different kind of year, different kind of journey, a different kind of war zone that I walked into, which was pretty brutal, seeing it as how it's a place that I had been to 2 other times during the year with many of you, with literally a few dozen of you who'd been there. And last year at High Holidays at the Torah service, I was looking back, and we had so many people that came up. We kind of focused on that as our aliyot. We called up people who had been on the Israel trip. And we had so many people that came up to do the aliyot. And who knew? So, as I mentioned last night, and I'm sure nearly every synagogue had to, at some point towards the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, say that this is a year where our people are in tremendous pain. That literally, I don't usually, before a Rosh Hashanah service or on a Shabbat, I don't usually go on and see what happened the night before, but I do that every day now. And so I did it this morning because God forbid something should have happened and I didn't know about it as I walked in here. Because every day has been like that. And this is a year that we already knew was going to be difficult because we knew that we were in an election cycle that was going to be fraught with anxiety and tension for us as Americans. So as I asked last night, how do we celebrate Rosh Hashanah this year? Today I want to offer a couple of lessons, not from the way we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, but from 2 of our spring holidays. In particular, I want to share a teaching from Yossi Klein Halevi. He's an American-Israeli writer. You'll see his contributions in lots of newspapers and magazines. I recommend that you read anything he writes. And he describes in an article 2 different kinds of Jews, Pesach Jews and Purim Jews. He says, Jewish history speaks to our generation in the voice of 2 biblical commands to remember. Both are to remember. He writes, the first voice commands us to remember that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. And the message of that command is, don't be brutal. The second voice commands us to remember how the tribe of Amalek, Haman is a descendant of Amalek, attacked us without provocation while we were wandering in the desert. And the message of that command is, don't be naive. Passover Jews are motivated by empathy for the oppressed. This is the Care and Compassion Foundation. Purim Jews are motivated by alertness to threat. You can think about which one you tend to be. But Yossi Klein Halevi points out that both voices are essential. Both sides are right. Both sides are wise to certain threats. And conveying that both sides are true and not ignoring one for the sake of the other is why they are both in the Bible. Both are traditional Jewish voices that we are commanded to remember, which is especially appropriate on this day of remembrance. Rosh Hashanah is called Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance. The story of Pesach is the defining moment of Jewish history. We were slaves in Egypt, subject to the harshest forms of oppression and humiliation. And when God liberated us from bondage, we were transformed into a free people. But that freedom came with a moral charge. The Torah commands us over and over and over again to remember what it felt like to be a stranger, an outsider, someone without power or rights. Nearly 40 times the Torah tells us, remember your experience from Egypt. The Pesach Jew embodies empathy and compassion. This is the moral voice of our tradition that speaks up for the marginalized, the poor, the vulnerable. We are reminded that our own liberation came at the price of terrible suffering. And that memory compels us to act with justice and kindness toward others. The Pesach Jew sees in every person the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, and believes that all people deserve dignity. This perspective has shaped Jewish involvement in movements for civil rights, for social justice, and human dignity throughout history. Whether it's standing up against racism, fighting for immigrants, or advocating for economic justice, Pesach Jews take seriously the Torah's call to never forget the stranger. This moral compass has kept the Jewish people at the forefront of efforts to heal and repair the world, to pursue tikkun olam. Today, as we look around the world, it's clear that the spirit of the Pesach Jew is as necessary as ever. The suffering of refugees, the victims of war, of poverty and systemic injustice, cries out to us. The Jewish heart is drawn to those who are displaced, marginalized, and struggling, even our enemies. It's why when 7 workers for World Central Kitchen were tragically killed in Gaza, our community, just months ago, raised millions of dollars for that organization. Pesach Jews remind us that we cannot turn our backs on those in need, for we were once them. And it's why at Temple Beth Ami, we've been hosting support groups for decades. People of all backgrounds have come to our synagogue for support through addiction, for help with their grief. The grief group that Joyce has been leading now for years, every Tuesday, has many people that are not part of our community, many people that are not Jewish. Right, Joyce? It's why our temple supports Bridge to Home. Our students just a couple weeks ago made about 80 bags for the people without homes. Right, Heather? Our youngest people in our community learning. And I got to tell you, Heather, just an amazing hero over this last year. One of the bright lights that helped all of us, especially our young people, make this year a lot better. And it's one of the reasons why Heather and the school is helping to spearhead the collection of food for the food pantry, our SCV food pantry, which we're doing again. And if you brought food today, we're going to collect it. We're going to collect it all the way through Yom Kippur, and we're going to ask you again to bring food supplies for our food pantry. It's one of the biggest times of collection for the food pantry, and they count on us. And so we'll be doing that again this year, in addition to something else I'm going to tell you about in a moment. Because we also have this other voice, and that's the Purim voice. It's an alarm that evil exists and that our people have been targets throughout history. The Purim Jew is vigilant, prepared to defend our community from those who seek us harm. This perspective is shaped by the knowledge that Jewish history is not just a story of moral progress, but also one of survival against enemies who would erase us from existence. For Purim Jews, security and protection of the Jewish people is paramount. They are aware that empathy alone cannot shield us from harm. In every generation, there has been an Amalek, a Haman, an enemy bent on our destruction. From ancient times to the Holocaust, to modern-day Jew hatred. From Haman to Hamas. Purim Jews remind us that we must remain watchful and strong. Today, with the resurgence of anti-Semitism around the world, and the existential threats faced by Israel, the Purim voice is crucial. There are real dangers that cannot be ignored. We cannot be complacent or naive when the survival of the Jewish people is at stake. We must be vigilant and strong, and we must ensure that our children and grandchildren inherit a future where Judaism and the Jewish people are safe and continue to thrive anywhere. Just a couple days ago, I got a text from a friend of mine in Pennsylvania. My friend Cindy said, "Did you hear about the University of Pittsburgh student that was attacked walking home back to his dorm this week?" And I said, "No." She said, "That was my son." And I said, "Is he okay?" She said, "Yeah, he has a busted lip. He has some bruises to his face." And she lives in the Philly area, but I thought about the other side of the state in Pittsburgh, which 6 years ago this month was the site of the Tree of Life massacre, where 11 of our brothers and sisters were shot down while they were worshiping on a Shabbos. In our own community, I don't know how this passed without more recognition, but 25 years ago, just a few miles from this place, in August of 1999, the North Valley Jewish Community Center, the place where my sister and I went to preschool, where lots of people have memories who grew up in the valley of that site, was attacked by somebody bent on killing children at camp. My friend over there, Todd Carb, was one of the first people on the scene as soon as the police cleared out that area. An EMT, he was there to rescue those kids, and I was over at Holy Cross Hospital when they brought the kids in. I went straight to the hospital, and I was there as the parents came to see their children, who thankfully all survived, and they're now, believe it or not, some of them are in their 30s now, but I'll never forget the image of a nurse coming out with the blood-soaked shoes to bring to a parent to say, are these your kids? Did you put these on your kids today? Well, but you don't have to go back 25 years, because in November, about 11 months ago, a Jewish guy who was simply carrying a flag of Israel was assaulted and died on the corner of Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Westlake Boulevard, right off the freeway, right on that corner that people have been rallying at, and you can see the video of it because I'm very close now with John Oswax, his friend, the person who gave him that flag about 5 minutes before he was killed. And some of us gathered there a few days later for a press conference to say that we're not going to allow Jews to be murdered in our community. And it's why at Temple Beth Ami over this last year, 3 days after October 7th, we had a rally at City Hall that many of you were at. And when I called the other rabbis and I called our mayor at the time, I said, we're going to have a rally in front of City Hall. I didn't really ask permission. I just said, we're doing this rally at City Hall. We had hundreds of people that came out, and then a few weeks later, I went to Kibbutz Be'eri, and I went to the area around Gaza that we raised money for. And walked these places with my own feet and saw it with my own eyes. And then our community responded with raising thousands of dollars for Kibbutz Be'eri. And that didn't stop because we had speakers from Israel throughout this last year. We had Nova survivors in our building that a lot of you were at in April. And the YouTube video of that has 6,500 views, 6,500 views. Now, I would like to tell you that our Torah study has that many views. But if you add up every Torah study this last year, it's not 6,500 views. And then a few months ago, we had Miles Rubin, who grew up at our synagogue, celebrated his bar mitzvah, who went on to serve in the IDF. And then this last year, graduated from Columbia University and talked about his experience being a Jewish student, being a veteran of the IDF, and then going through an almost constant barrage of hatred until his graduation. He's one of the 4 plaintiffs that sued Columbia University before October 7th even happened. This lawsuit was already in the workings because it was not safe to be a Jewish student to love Israel on that campus before October 7th. And so Miles told his story. That video is up there as well. And we had a chance to help him with some of his equipment because he went back to Israel a few months ago to serve in the IDF. He couldn't stay here anymore, knowing that his friends and his colleagues, his battalion was back in Gaza, so he went back. And so we pray for Miles' safety and make sure he had the equipment that he needed, a new helmet. A couple of weeks ago, we had members of the kibbutz movement that came and talked about what it was like, not only on October 7th. Adele Raymer spoke about her and her daughter and grandchildren that were at Kibbutz Nirim on October 7th, and what the kibbutz movement is doing now, not just for the people in the south, in the Gaza area, but also up north, to the 70,000 people that are celebrating this Rosh Hashanah, not in their homes. And so we're helping the people there through the kibbutz movement as well, through Temple Beth Ami. And closer to home, that's why on Yom HaAtzmaut we unfurled the big flag. Some of you were there. We did it up by Magic Mountain. We unfurled this huge Israeli flag and flew a drone over it to show our support and love for Israel on a very difficult Yom HaAtzmaut. And it's also why in our community we've started Krav Maga classes. That is not just for our synagogue, but for all the synagogues cooperating together. And we have now, I never thought our synagogue would officially have a gun training class, but we do. And our next sessions, our next days at Oak Tree Gun Club are coming out at the end of October. Because we wanted to make sure that everyone in our community feels safe and secure, whatever that means to them, within the confines of not hurting others, but unless we have to. And it's why we're going to be having a rally on October 7th this year, on Monday, to commemorate and to hold a vigil and to show our strength together as a community. Now, we originally were going to do it at City Hall. And this time I asked for permission and I asked the current mayor to come. And they asked us not to do it there. Because the last time we did it, we did have counter-protesters. We had people who, I don't even want to call them counter-protesters. On October 10th, Israel had not started a grounded response and had not really, this war hadn't really started yet. But there were already people that were coming, that came out, and from what we understand, they came out from outside of this community to literally rain on our parade, to literally try to drive over some of the people that were there. Fortunately, the sheriff's department came in and escorted those people out, but the city asked us not to do it there. They asked us to do it at another place, and they were helping us try to find that other place. But as I talked to the other rabbis in the community, we decided that it should be done, and we decided to do it instead of asking or paying for a permit and to do it this way, to do it at one of our places. And so we all decided that it would be at Chabad. So it's going to be at 6 o'clock at Chabad, right by our place, because it's fairly central, and we thought it would be a nice place to do it. And so it'll be October 7th at Chabad. And we hope you can join with us to show our strength as a community and to remember and to honor those who perished. Again, now almost 2,000 of our people that have died in the last year in Israel. And the people who've died outside of Israel, people like Paul Kessler. And for him, we're going to be having a rally on November 8th, of the day he died, at the corner where he was killed, where he was murdered. Because make no mistake about it, he'd be alive if he hadn't been pushed to the ground. And that trial is coming up, but there's a good chance that the murderer will not serve time in prison, actually. But whatever happens in the system of justice, we're going to be there to show our strength. And so there'll be more information coming out. That'll be Friday, November 8th. And it'll be at noon. And John and some of the other people who are there that day will be with us as we gather at that corner of Thousand Oaks and Westlake Boulevard. And on Yom Kippur, we're going to have some very special guests who are going to be talking to us about this other very important project we're doing during the high holidays, which is raising money and supplies, because you can bring either one, for Shuva Achim, for the junction that is the last stop, what was a gas station and was turned into a informal supply station for soldiers, men and women who are going into Gaza over this last year. And so we're going to be hearing more about that at Yom Kippur with some special speakers to tell us about that. And we're going to be collecting those supplies. There's a flyer on our website, and there's also a flyer here today, a hard copy that you can take with you with a list of some of the goods, some of the medical supplies that we're gathering together for the soldiers that are still being called in to go to Gaza. And it's why over these last months we've started a new group, not just for our synagogue, but for anybody in our community who feels called on to do something, just even to talk about the feelings that they have. And that is our SCV, Jewish Action Committee. And I actually want to call up Ariella Bimby, who is the cause, the inspiration, and the guide for this. Ariella, if you'd come up to tell us what's going on with the SCVJAC, which you can also get a flyer from about today. Yeah, thanks.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm guessing I'm the Purim Jew. Okay. Hi, Shana Tova. So the Santa Clarita Valley Jewish Action Committee was really born this past summer in conversations with the rabbi about how so many of us were feeling just angry and frustrated and sad about what has been happening in not just Israel, but in seeing the anti-Semitism around the world and online. And so we wanted to make a space for people where they could express their feelings amongst other people that felt just like them, but also where we could come up with ideas so that they could feel empowered to actually take action and feel like they're actually doing something when it seems like oftentimes our voices might not matter or we can't physically help. So we meet once a month, and we do have a moderated discussion so we can try and stay on task. The discussion points cover first just a check-in to see how everybody's feeling, to see if there's anybody who needs support. And then we talk about various ideas that we can do to put into action, which is how the Shuva campaign came into play, and we're very excited. We're collecting needed items for the IDF soldiers. And then the last point is just really discussing next steps. How do we make these ideas come to fruition? We welcome you to join. You don't actually have to be a temple member. You just have to have a strong desire to want to fight anti-Semitism and to also support Israel. So there are flyers up front, and we have the remaining dates listed on the flyer for the rest of the year, and we hope you join us. Thank you. Shana Tova.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for really making sure that we did something in a practical way, in a regular way, a constant way. And we're also going to be having in February an Israel festival. It's going to be February 2nd, and we're still finalizing and making that site solid, but it's going to be a chance for us to have organizations that are helping Israel, and we'll have food, we'll have goods and arts and crafts that are made in Israel that can be sold locally. It's again, another way for us to stand as a community, and that's going to be something that the whole community will be involved with. We're hoping the Consul General here from Israel will be here for that, and we already have some amazing speakers that are going to be there. Some really, really well-known speakers, both Jewish and Gentile, who are going to be talking about how important Israel is and helping us understand and remember. Because memory is not a passive act for us. It's always something in Judaism that memory leads to action. It guides not just the things we know, but the way we act. And it's one of the reasons why we have the classes that we have at our synagogue, that we have every Tuesday morning a chance to read the Tanakh, the Bible, together at 9 o'clock, to understand what our Torah says about how to live. But also Wednesday evening is our chance to read rabbinic texts at 7 p.m., our Talmud class, where we learn what the sages not only built on from the Torah, but also their own experiences, who lived through very dark days of the Roman Empire. A lot of the Talmud, especially the early part, was written during the Greco-Roman period when the Jews were suffering tremendous tragedy, tremendous loss. It's amazing, again, how many opportunities we have to learn, to study. And again, we have the ones in our synagogue, but there's ones throughout our country and around the world now that you have access to through the internet. And to be able to, again, people talk about all the bad stuff that's on the internet, but there's so much learning. There's so much opportunity for learning. And I think what's going on in our world right now, the conversion classes, the Intro to Judaism classes that are going on right now, and we have a few people, I'm not going to call them out, but the people who have gone through conversion this last year or who have gone through classes in this last year. But I will tell you, from speaking to them, to understand what's happening right now, these classes are full. In some cases, the classes were so large that they had to split up a class into two because there were so many people that had enrolled. That's what's happening now. In the midst of all of this chaos and tension and Jew hatred, people are running to join the Jewish people. But we have to know what it is that we're fighting for. We have to understand what it is that this is all about. Because it's not just surviving for the sake of survival, it's surviving for the sake of this message, which the world so desperately needs. And so when we think about these archetypes, the Pesach Jew and the Purim Jew, it's clear that they exist in a kind of tension. The Pesach Jew, driven by compassion for others, while the Purim Jew is focused on the survival of our people. One calls for the care of the stranger, and the other warns us to protect our own. And this year at Rosh Hashanah, we can grow by recognizing that this is not an either-or choice. Both perspectives are valid, and both are necessary. Jewish history and the Torah contain both voices because we need them both. We cannot be so consumed by empathy that we forget to protect ourselves. But neither can we be so consumed by fear that we lose our moral compass? In a world that feels increasingly divided, it is tempting to retreat into one camp or the other, to see ourselves only as Pesach Jews or Purim Jews. But our tradition tells us we have to have both. As we face the challenges of this moment, whether personal, communal, or global, we must draw from the wisdom of the Pesach and Purim Jew. We are heirs to both voices, and it is our responsibility to carry them forward. We are commanded to remember, not just for the sake of tradition, to honor the past, but because these memories guide us in how we live today and will ensure a brighter and more peaceful future. On this Yom HaZikaron, this day of remembrance, we remember both voices. We hear them and we bring them into harmony. This year, may we live as Jews who embody both compassion and vigilance, empathy and strength. And may we remember the lessons of our history as we seek to build a future where the Jewish people and all people continue to live in justice, peace, and security. Amen.